All right, hi, Mountain Shadows. So this is another one of the videos I'm doing for y'all to watch. And for this one, and for some of the other ones that I'm planning on doing, I'm going to read an article from The Economist. The Economist is a news source, a news outlet that I'm subscribed to for one of my classes. I'm subscribed to this for one of my geography courses. And so I get their weekly editions, and it has information on countries all across the world, um, new information happening, like regarding the politics, across the world and in the United States, and just really helps keep me updated on what's going on. And so I wanted to share one of the articles in this edition in the books and arts section. Thought it kind of fits nicely with, how we meet and we talk about art for Mountain Shadows and the TLC. So yeah, I'm going to read, it's called Cabin Fever. It's about contemporary art, and it looks like this. It has an interesting image. It's kind of hard to see. It's like white wood, and I'm kind of interested to hear what this one's about. And so I'll read this one to you all. People and buildings have come and gone in Mile End since it was first recorded as a settlement in 1288. Some of the Victorian terraces that survived the bombing raids on East London during the Second World War were slated for demolition half a century later. A resident in Grove Rose held out, and eventually his was among the only houses standing. When at last he left, a 30-year-old British sculptor called Rachel Whitered obtained a temporary lease on the property and set to work. She erected a steel skeleton inside and sprayed liquid concrete on the walls and up 3 flights of stairs. Removing the exterior shell left a mold of the home's interior. The ghostly effect was offset by the living sense of switches flicked. The ghostly effect was offset by the living sense of switches flicked, fireplaces aglow, door handles turned. House drew crowds, some in wonder, others jeering. Woot for, what for? Someone spray painting on the side. Why not? Came the enigmatic reply. The sculpture won Miss Whitered the Turner Prize in 1993, the first time it was awarded to a woman. On the same night, she won the Anti-Turner Prize for the worst example of British art. 2 months later, House was demolished on the orders of the local council. The artist sat in her chair and watched. Then she went back to her studio. Her output since has been prodigious. Some works have been massive, others intimate. Some are made of concrete or plaster, others of colored resin, but all are recognizably Miss Whitered's, full of surprising ideas about mundane settings. Having once cast the inside of a cupboard and covered it in black felt to represent the feelings of a child taking refuge in a parent's wardrobe, she reproduced the empty space under chairs and in toilet paper rolls. The monumental, nameless library in Vienna, with its walls of books, the spines of the cast turned inwards and ineligible, was a tribute to the Austrian Jews killed in the Holocaust. As Ben Luke, a critic, noted, casting empty spaces became her way of creating something mysterious and unique and uncanny. Casts were her sculptural language. This is why the new work she had produced at nearly 60 is so surprising. In the past, Miss Whitered says, the nature of the final object has been to do with pouring material into a mold. So it's always about making a negative, which ends up being the final piece. In a stark departure, her new sculptures are completely invented, and what I've invented is a skin of an object rather than an interior. Miss Whitered has gathered all manner of scrap material and shaped it into cabins, which she has painted into layer after layer of white emulsion. Superficially, these assembled structures might seem to be distinguished from her molds only by the construction methods, but the impact of the works could not be more different. The smooth exteriors and solid shapes of her earlier pieces bring to mind classical ideals of proportion, balance, and symmetry. Richard Calvo-Coresi, an art historian, writes, adver- adver- advertorially in the catalog for Miss Whitered's new show. By contrast, the latest sculptures evoke openness, disorder, the uncontrolled. Instead of a smooth finish in the new cabins, there's old lath, discarded wire, netting, slates of wood with nail banging to them, corrugated iron so degraded and full of holes as to resemble lace. And the one called Poltergeist has the appearance of an abandoned shelter. Something much more catastrophic is happening in Doppelganger. It appears, which is actually the art piece that is pictured here. Again, that's kind of hard to see because it's white on white. It appears ripped, open, torn apart, smashed, and collapsed. As Miss Calver-Kessie puts it, pinned on the wall of Miss Whitered's studio in London is a small reproduction of Raft of the Medusa. And you can see how Theodore's romantic painting of shipwrecked sailors inspired the cabin's rickety floors and its huge diagonal gash. I wanted to make the opposite of what I'd been asking, Miss Whitered says, but I couldn't envisage what that was. I just knew I wanted it to be imperial, to be like skin and bones. Three things account for the shift, she believes: a career retrospective that filled the galleries at Tate Britain in 2017 for a worldwide tour, for how much work she had made over 30 years, freeing her to set off in a new direction. Then the pandemic meant her new exhibition was postponed and also forced her to look again at what was essential. She and her family withdrew to their houses in rural Wales. But it was a diagnosis 8 years ago of bipolar disorder that helped the artist understand the emotional turmoil and depression she has experienced since she was a teenager. Miss Whitered hasn't spoken about her illness publicly before and insists it is not severe. I wasn't out of control. I wasn't running around with my clothes off, screaming and shouting, but she had been hospitalized more than once in the past decade and must take medication for the rest of her life. She has long dedicated herself as an emotional sponge. I just soak things up. I'm well generally, but sometimes things just pile on and a valve goes. Looking back, she realizes that her illness has always been present in her work, but identifying it caused a shift. Something happened that freed me to somehow make that more apparent than maybe it was before. The name of her new work, Internal Objects, is telling. Yes, it has been affected by my diagnosis without a doubt. Miss Whitered says, I think what I've done here is I've extended my vocabulary, which is a very nice feeling. Feels like there's a whole new thing I can do. All right, so that's the end. There are actually some pretty tough words in here that I come across often when I read this that I've like never heard before. So sorry for stumbling on those words. Yeah, this is an interesting art piece that this lady creates. She creates a lot of interesting art, and I hope you all enjoy listening to this. Bye.